of Talking Pictures Alliance in 3, 2, 1. Today we talk about Neo and Trinity and Agent Smith's odd affinity. Everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Talking Pictures Alliance. I am host Kristen Ashton, here with co-host Jeff Reynolds. Jeff, welcome today. How are you doing?
Oh, so good. So good for so many reasons, including this awesome reason of episode 1 of Talking Pictures Alliance, and also so good because of this movie we're talking about today.
Right? This is a movie from our collective childhoods. This is something that came out in formative years, I would say. It was late middle school, early high school, The Matrix released, 1999. No one had seen this bullet time fight style before, and it revolutionized movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's an understatement, I think, for a whole lot of reasons. The real question here that I've been thinking about all day today is why I felt so cool because I was the person that understood the film and got to explain it to all of my friends.
No way! No way! So I'd never had that experience, man. I'm so jealous. So you're saying of your friends, did they love it? They just didn't get it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I should say a lot of my close friends got it, right? A lot of my nerdy friends that were just like me got it and they understood the movie. But then, of course, my sister or my mom or, this is a real showing of who my real friends are. My sister and my mom or somebody wouldn't understand what the movie was. And then I would go in there and be like, oh, you don't understand The Matrix? Well, let me explain it to you. And it just increased my nerd level tenfold.
Well, of course, you got to have movies that do that, right? This was a movie I had to fight to see, actually, because I wasn't technically old enough to see rated R movies. So I had to fight tooth and nail with my parents. And no, there's no gore, there's no weird sex stuff. It's just an action movie. And they said yes.
Good for you. So tell me a little bit about the first time that you watched it, Kristen. Do you remember the first time you watched it?
I was at home and we rented it from Blockbuster.
Telling.
Yep, we rented it from Blockbuster. Of course, I wasn't old enough to see it in theaters, so I had to bring it home and watch it in the safety. But my parents didn't even watch it with me to verify that what I said was true.
That's great, though. That's great that they trusted you to watch it. You're right. You're 100% right, though. There's not a lot of gore in the movie. I mean, if any. And then, watching it again was really fun. Really, really fun to go back and watch it to prep for this show. And, the violence is something that it's different nowadays than it used to be when The Matrix first came out.
Yes, it was. It's not bad. It's definitely choreography that holds up, and it's kind of classic in that sense, right? It's a fight style that I think will transcend time as the movie goes forward. Sure, it's got the motif of a future world, but I was reading who did the choreography, and it's this Chinese martial artist named Yuan Wu Ping who did Drunken Master way back in the day, Jackie Chan's big hit. And then he would go on to do Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the Kill Bill series.
Wow. I mean, that's one of the things that really strikes home about this film and watching it again, just even today. The fight choreography and everything that goes on in this movie and the amount of training that they had to do. There are a few videos on YouTube that you can watch where you can see the training that, Keanu Reeves had to go through, Lawrence Fishburne had to go through in order to learn how to fight like this. And it's so fast. And you would think that would be the magic of editing, that in post-production they're editing the speed of this fight and they're making it faster, which I'm sure they did, but still they're doing this pretty fast.
They really are. And I mean, we're not talking about young kids either, where you'd think a movie's so action-packed. These people, they're well into their 30s. And Lawrence Fishburne, even, he's an older guy compared to everybody.
Yeah, he's phenomenal in this movie. He might be my favorite performance in this whole movie is Lawrence Fishburne, I think.
Yeah, even more so than Agent Smith.
Yeah, I would say his in my opinion, that whole it's a more realistic approach to a character rather than Agent Smith is a more for lack of a better term, robotic or one line, one note, which it should be, because Agent Smith is a computer program, right? And Morpheus is this person that is an actual real life person. Not only that, but a real life person that has been taken out of a computer program and realizes he needs to be even more of a real person. I mean, it's a deeper story here. It's a harder role, in my opinion, for someone to portray than Agent Smith. Not taking anything away from Smith, he's fantastic, but I just feel that performance might have been a little tougher.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you've hit the nail on the head. And that was my first time I remember seeing Lawrence Fishburne. I'd never really noticed him in any films before. But this was like, who is this guy? And then you find out he was a Captain Cowboy or something on a kids show earlier on. Oh, how far people go. Okay, so Morpheus is your favorite character.
Yeah, I think Morpheus is definitely my favorite character. You know, the thing about Neo in the film, in the first film, is I'm not a huge fan of his performance. And I want to get your thought on this, Kristen, because a lot of people gave a lot of flack to Keanu Reeves for this film, just for his performance in the film. But I don't have a huge problem with it. I just don't fall in love with the character.
That's fair. And I wonder if maybe he was cast because they wanted him to be a blank slate everyman. Like anybody could be this guy working a job they hate. Maybe there is kind of a double life going on. You know, he streams or he was a elite hacker getting bad computer programs and selling them for $2,000 a pop at the beginning of the movie. And he's unhappy with his life.
On a floppy disk.
Exactly, on a floppy disk. And this brings in a fun question. Do you think people are going to get the phone internet connection? I mean, how many years before people are going to have to research dial-up to understand this phone internet back and forth through the Matrix real world thing?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking the same exact thing while I was watching it. You know, having to answer a payphone, and then when you answer the payphone, you get disconnected or connected back into this virtual world, right? Something that we don't really experience the same fashion. But as you bring this up, I'm thinking about people are totally connected to their phones now. So maybe that line could be drawn where, you know, the phone is the way that you connect or disconnect from what you're doing. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do remember we did recall those days because kids listening, you've got it easy. In the days of dial-up and early internet, you'd try to stay online. You're having a great time, but your parents need to use the phone because the internet came through the phone line, so you couldn't get any calls if someone was on the internet. And boy, howdy, there were some fights I got into with my parents.
Totally. I mean, it's just, you know, you'd be in the den or the computer room, or which we used to call it the computer room, which I don't think they call that anymore because I think every room has a computer in it now. But you'd be like, "Mom, get off the phone. I'm about to go online." And the only reason I was going online was because my friend that lived across the street, Instant Messenger had just come out and I wanted to chat with him on Instant Messenger. So I'm across the street.
Right? We could have just called our friends, but no. Instant Messenger was the cool thing to do. It was amazing. So we've got that. So bringing it back to the fight styles, would you say Morpheus is your favorite fight style design, or is there another character who you like a bit better in that regard?
Oh man, it's real hard to say that Morpheus isn't the coolest. I mean, Trinity has some really cool, legitimate Black Widow moments in there. I mean, talk about inspiration for future films. I see that as like a direct inspiration. What is really cool about all of these Matrix films is that the fight choreography carries over. These characters have signature moves, right? So Morpheus has his signature move. Trinity has her, scorpion kick signature move thing. That's cool. But I got to get behind Morpheus. Just this older, bigger guy is able to do all this shit. I mean, it's really cool.
Dude, totally. And he's a paladin. I will argue that Morpheus is the paladin of the movie with how sold he is on finding the one and believing that Neo is the one.
Yeah, I mean, to the grave, right? I mean, even if we're just talking about this first film, it's down to, the Oracle comes in and Neo clearly was told something that made him upset. And Morpheus can tell, and Morpheus doesn't care because Neo is the one. Like, no matter what she told him, he knows that he's the one.
Yep, and what a cool way to do the Oracle, right? That could have been cheesy. And I feel like going back on this rewatch here, it wasn't too cheesy at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Oracle is real cool. What I do think is a little cheesy is the kids in the lobby with the Oracle and the whole like the super smart, kids that are bending spoons and doing stuff like this. That's a little cheesy. But once we get into the actual scene with the Oracle and Neo and the whole, being in that's something that the Matrix does really well, right? I mean, when you go into this scene, you're in a kitchen of an apartment building. You're not in like an all-white room that we somehow get to in the third Matrix. You're in this like dingy computer program where the Oracle just happens to be basically in hiding, and this is a person you might walk by on the street one day that can do all of these things. I think that is such a cool scene. And after the kids part, it's not super cheesy.
No, I agree. And we have this wonderful dialogue between the two. And this movie is rife with great lines. I had forgotten so many lines I loved. So many lines, like the part where he's captured by the agents and he goes, "Why don't I give you the finger and you give me my phone call?" Little Kristen, love that one. But this one I noticed, the Oracle, her response to Neo about his ultimate question, is he the one or not, it's like being in love. No one can tell you when you're in love. And so she basically says, "I can't tell you." And it explains that yes or no, whether he is or isn't, she really doesn't have the answer until he finds whatever it is he's missing.
Yeah, and it begs the question of, would he even have become the one if she had told him that? And Morpheus alludes to that a little bit later in the film when he says, she told you whatever you needed to hear. So maybe he needed to hear that he wasn't, or maybe he needed to hear this ambiguous sort of answer, and it pushes him to become the one in the end. I mean, that's not lazy writing, in my opinion. I think that really drives the story forward in a negative, with negative pressure rather than positive pressure. I think that's really cool.
No, totally. And I mean, think about the vase that he knocks over in her apartment and she says, "Don't worry about it." And also then begs the question, would you have knocked over the vase if I had said something about it or not? Which, Avengers is kind of pulling on a little bit. No spoilers, of course.
Yeah, I totally agree. Back to some one-liners. I mean, there's a lot. The whole conversation about when oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. The guy that ends up being the super antagonist that sells everybody out.
Cypher,
that's it. So ironic name, right? I mean, Cypher. When he goes back and he's eating with Agent Smith and he's eating the steak, right? And he's cutting the steak and he's eating it and he's like, "When I eat this, the Matrix is telling my body what it tastes like." Those kind of conversations are cool.
oh my goodness, because and that was big, I think. And I earlier in the show I brought up the movie happened during our formative years, right? When we were really kind of discovering our own place in the world, which I think is what makes middle school so challenging sometimes. But this movie comes out and it makes you question everything. Is what you're doing real? Is it ordained? Is it not ordained? Does it even matter?
Yeah. What if it wasn't real? I mean, you wouldn't even know. And you know, you don't even have the ability to know. So do you just go on working in your cubicle in your office and you just kind of live? I mean, makes you ask a lot of questions. And I don't think we would be talking about this movie today if it wasn't thought provoking, if it wasn't something that had action in it, had cool stuff in it, had fight scenes in it, but it's super thought provoking. So I think that it lives on because of that.
Totally. And it's a great example of a classic hero journey. I mean, Star Wars, of course, is the epitome of semi-modern now a hero journey. But this one we get Neo, he's called to adventure with the phone call. Morpheus, he knows it's Morpheus, and Morpheus tells him what to do, and he can't get himself to the scaffolding once he's out of the window. So it's that refusal. Then he goes on, he's finally starting to accept things. We get the Oracle, that supernatural aid that you are or you aren't, I can't really tell you that. Then we get Morpheus who's taken, and Neo has to do something that's never been done before. They're probably going to die, and they state that many times. That's that crossing of the threshold. He's accepted what he is. He goes into the belly of the beast. He dies and he's reborn in a sense. And because of that, he's able to take off like Superman at the end of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, he's hacked in basically at this point, and that's the victory lap really at the very end of the film. Who's your favorite character in the film?
My favorite character, I really enjoy Mouse. I wouldn't say he's my favorite, but I do enjoy Mouse because I feel like the Nebuchadnezzar crew, it's just a D&D group getting together, and it's so sad that they have to kill off so many to get to the core group. But when I was younger, I really did like Trinity because she had that whole dodge this moment. As corny as that line can be, back when it first came out, that was good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's still good. It's still real good. Yeah, Trinity has a great performance in the film as well. There's some really good writing in there, and the whole opening scene when she's running around that room and you don't know what to expect. And there are people that hadn't seen this. My wife Kayla hadn't seen the film, and I was watching it the other day, and she caught a little glimpse of it, and she's like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "What do you mean? What am I watching?" And then so we had to watch it again, and I watched it last night with her, and I felt like the little kid Jeff again because I was like, "Okay, we're gonna pause." Boop. All right, do you understand what's going on? I have no idea. How did she just run around the room? Like, that's going to be explained later. This is what's going on now, like in these moments in there. And she actually is not a super huge fan of these hardcore sci-fi kind of films, but she really enjoyed it because there's a really strong woman, female character in this film, Trinity. And then also she's the one teaching Neo how to do these things at the very beginning. She's the one that doesn't give up on Neo at the end. All of these sorts of things, she really, really liked it. And then, of course, the special effects hold up in a lot of those scenes. I think a lot of those gunfights and stuff like that, it holds up.
It's true. A lot of the wire that they used is great. They didn't go over crazy with the CGI. So, of course, there's some ripples you see and you're going, oh, come on, computer, you can do this. The bug crawling into the navel, almost believe in it. But there were still a lot of practical effects at the time. So it's still, like you said, holds up so well. So she ended up enjoying it. Yeah, did she have a favorite part? Like one that you knew she was hooked for the rest of the film?
Well, it happened at the very end. She's a real sucker for parts like, when the Nebuchadnezzar is blowing up and Trinity is down and holding Neo and she says, "You can't die because the Oracle told me that I would fall in love with the one, and I love you," and that kind of stuff. Usually, that's when I go grab a snack, but that was her favorite part, and it's good. It's a good part. It's a good little close to the film. I love how you brought up the CGI aspect of it because CGI is real scarce in this. They had to do a lot of practical effects in 99, and the practical effects that they do are just really, really great. The bullet time, the cameras that they use to get that done. I mean, it's really stellar.
Oh, dude, totally. And I don't know if you've watched any of the behind the scenes stuff, but I know at least when Neo is falling back and dodging bullets for the first time, the room he's in is cameras in a circle all around him, and they basically do stop motion pictures while he's moving, and it's a green screen, so then they put the surroundings back into it when they're done, and I thought that was wicked cool.
Yeah, so you're a movie producer now, Kristen, let's imagine. And they say that you can do that scene, and there's two ways you can do it. You can get all these cameras, set this thing up, put them on wires, make them do the whole thing. We're going to have to do this like 10 times. It's going to take a week of filming to get this one shot done. Or we can just get a team of CGI artists in here and just have him do it CGI.
That's it breaks my heart to hear that because I want to do the practical effects as much as possible. I don't want the CGI stuff because it rarely holds up. It ages so poorly in time if it's done not as well as it should be. I think Jurassic Park kind of still holds up really well until, it's like broad daylight dinosaurs running around. But the practical effects really give it a heart and soul and a cheesiness, but not bad cheesiness, right? It's a legitimacy where it feels like the crew is having fun with this. They know this idea is wackadoodle, but we're filming a movie about people living in a computer program and being harvested as batteries.
Yeah, really. Totally. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this on this show just forever because I agree with you tenfold. Like it's practical effects, the opening scene when Trinity is sitting at the desk, she runs around the wall and then she jumps up into that, flying crane kick in the middle of the air. That's also a bullet time moment where the cameras kind of swirl around where she's at. In subsequent Matrix films, that would have been CGI. They would have gone back and they would have CGI'd that. And that looks horrible in the other Matrix films. It looks like a video game or anime series, right? And it just looks really bad. But when you watch it now and you watch that crane kick moment where she flies up in the air, it still looks good because it's a practical effect.
Yes, and not that the practical effect, and it's the woman. She learned how to do that, and she had to hold that for however long they needed her to. That's amazing. That's like going to Cirque du Soleil and seeing these incredible acrobats and artists perform feats you would have never thought possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to get your opinion on is the colors of the film, right? That's something that really caught my eye this time around watching it. When they're in the Matrix, the colors of the film are these really, really bland pastel colors that aren't sharp at all, and it has that feel. I'm sure that was intentional.
Yes, according to some Q&A that I came across, it looks like, so with the computer program, you'll find that when you're in the Matrix, it's all greens. And when you're in the real world, they went with a blue tint. And man, is it apparent going through there. And the only time they break this is when the characters are in a neutral space, like a training ground, like the fight between Morpheus and Neo. It's in a very yellow color. You don't see any green or blue because it's somewhere else.
Yeah, can we talk about that fight for a second? Because that's
course.
Probably one of my favorite parts of
It's so
this
good.
film.
Morpheus's facial expressions. He's having so much fun during this fight.
And this guy is working his ass off in this fight, right? So I don't know how many takes they had to do to get it to where, he does all this stuff. Neo is clearly sweating, out of breath on the ground, hitting the floor. And then Morpheus turns around and he's just totally okay because it is a computer program. He's not actually physically doing these things. And he realizes that. That is cool. And that must have been really hard to do.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what's your favorite part of the fight? When was that fight sold for you and you just started to want to practice punching or kicking or kneeing?
Yeah, everybody's got their moment. My moment is when Morpheus says, "Stop trying to hit me and hit me." And when they're like, going out, "Stop trying to hit me and hit me." And they go faster and faster and faster. it's great. Obviously, the whole hand moment with the, come here hand moment, that's iconic, and it lives on through all the Matrix films. And that's where it started.
It was so good. And let's not forget that it started something that IMDb lists this, and I believe it to be true. 2 years later, by 2001, over or about 20 movies had Matrix references in them because this movie was so popular. And it was probably all of that bullet time stuff. I know at least Shrek, right? They threw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, references to the Matrix are still happening today. I reference it when I'm playing Heroes with my friends, right? When I'm playing games with my friends, I say, stop trying to hit me and hit me. I say stuff like this all the time because, like we were talking about, like you were saying, this movie's iconic, and we wouldn't be talking about it today if it didn't have that.
It was so good. All right, and we also have some thoughts too. We've got this mailbag thing going on this show where you guys, you listeners, you can write into us. You can tweet at us your thoughts on your favorite things about these movies, because we can gush about this stuff all day, but everyone's got different perspectives on it. So our first one is from Kilmarnark 1285, and his favorite parts, two parts, that there is no spoon, and that isn't really air I'm breathing right now.
Yeah, talk about great parts, right? I mean, the spoon aspect of it has a story to tell. It has a reason that it's in the film, right? Because it's Neo opening up even more to the Matrix. Like, this spoon that you see is not, there is no spoon. You're living in a computer program. And then the air you're breathing right now is kind of like the aha moment of everything that Neo thought was real in the past is not. Everything, even down to what you can't see, which is the air.
Totally. And it does a great job trying to really portray the mental strain that a human would come under, because they bring up at some point that after a certain age, they don't bring people out because you mentally can't handle it. And just the sheer depression you would have to battle with, that the reality you lived in the late 90s of the 20th century, when things are prosperous, you had a job, there was sunshine, all of that stuff is a lie. And now you're part of this ragtag, crusty D&D group stuck in a ship that's over 100 years old, trying to start a revolution against machines?
Yeah, right? I mean, what do you do in that moment? I mean, Neo handles it pretty well, all things considered.
Right, and he's lucky because he's the one. Everyone else, what's their story? Like, what did they have to go through to accept and keep living that this is now the reality?
Yeah, you wake up in a bubble of slime and a robot chokes you. That always looks really painful. Every time I watch that, I'm like, that's some pretty good acting right there. When that robot reaches its arm out and clamps it on the guy's neck, and Neo's like, ugh. I mean, it's great.
Oh, dude, and when he's pulling the gas nozzle out of his mouth, yeah, that one, you gotta make sure your stomach isn't too weak for that. Oh, but we like that. And then we got a second one here from Ashton Drapella. And this one, she enjoys that they change perspective. And I say she because my last name is Ashton. So there you go, Ashton. All right. They have written that it changes perspective on how we are all living in a narrative created by others. Our social contracts, economy, culture, etc., albeit not as extreme as being energy sources for robots, plus cool effects.
Yeah, this one is really good. I mean, it gets you to think about just that narrative created by others, right? And then if we want, we can be Morpheus and Neo and create our own narrative for ourselves. But you know, it's been stated in a lot of fiction that people are just these sheep that just live through life, and you know, you're just counting down the days until you die, basically looking for the next day and the next day and the next day. So when you start talking about creating your own narrative, it's inspiring in the fact of these people in the film are doing that, and I think it's really great. I mean, what if our life right now it kind of functions like a video game, like a computer program, right? You got your expansions, you got your job promotions, you got your moving to a different state, you got your going on vacations, which are like weekend events. You got all this stuff that are happening to you, and it works kind of like that.
It really does. I love that idea, right? You have achievements too that you can unlock, all of that good stuff that adds to your character. And then you, as a person, have control as to how you view that narrative. No one else can tell you what to think of your own life. This is your story, and it's going to be as epic or as not epic as you make it. And that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And maybe that's where freedom ultimately comes from. It's not you being put into a computer program and forced to live in 99. You choose to accept reality for what it is, and then you kick it as hard as you can to make the most of what little you have sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said.
Awesome. Well, I think we've had some great topics here with this, but no art is without its inspiration. And something I wanted to bring into this show is other stuff you can check out if you really like The Matrix. And I kind of want to leave this open with some time for discussion because a lot of this stuff is really, really cool. So, Jeff, if you had a film you could recommend, a film or films you could recommend to people who like The Matrix, what would you recommend to them?
You know, and if you do the research on this, you can go online and you see that there, obviously, like we talked about, there are tons of films that are inspired by the thought of this film, the whole plot of this film, how people, aren't living in the world that they actually are. One that stands out to me, and one of the films that I really enjoy, and I think it's because I enjoy things like The Matrix, is Inception, Christopher Nolan's film, recently released. I mean, recently in the last 5-10 years. So if you haven't seen Inception, I think that's a really good film that kind of really makes your brain work.
Gotcha. So you're saying this one because it really plays with how you view reality.
Yeah, and what is real and what isn't, and what reality are you actually living in, right? Because who's to say in the Matrix, when you became quote unquote unplugged, you weren't actually being plugged in, right? You pick up this phone and you go to a different place. What if that's the virtual world? What if when you pick this up, you think you're going to the real world and Morpheus is standing there and he's explaining to you, this is the real world, right? But what if it wasn't? What if this whole time that was the virtual world?
And no one knows because it just goes on forever. You never freaking know. So is that a favorite genre of yours then? The whole questioning reality thing?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I do. I have a bunch of favorite genre films. This is I love having to keep track of where we are in a film. It sounds like work, right?
But if you want to keep your brain engaged, right? You need to be you need to be called back time and time again. Okay, what is going on?
Yeah, and then Inception and The Matrix both do this. Inception makes it, it takes what The Matrix did and pushes it to,
7 levels of
120%. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and for films, I would say Akira because all over reading about the making of and the Wachowskis, they loved Akira. And that if you ever look into anime, Akira is always one of the first things you're recommended to watch. I don't know if I would agree with that, but it is a cornerstone of animation and really, really crazy storytelling.
Yeah, I have to watch that. And it's funny that you said this because we were talking about anime the other day and someone suggested to us that I watch. I'm not into anime, but they did immediately snap your fingers and they suggested Akira to watch. And I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but it's because I've been watching The Matrix like 100 times.
Exactly. And I mean, The Matrix, I don't know, is this American anime to an extent? American cinema anime?
It definitely has a lot of, I mean, I feel, with all of the Matrix comics and all of the sort of art style of those types of things, it feels as though it has a Japanese influence, right? At least to me. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, especially with the fight style. And I know it's a Chinese choreographer that went in there, but it kind of ties in that whole Oriental area of the world. That's probably as foreign to Americans as foreign can be, just because of how far away it is. And there's this magic to it sometimes, I think, because we don't see it regularly. It just woof, blows our little minds.
Now, I have a question that I didn't fully. This is just coming to my brain right now in
Do
the middle of
it.
the
Throw it
section.
out there.
But okay, so Neo's sitting in the chair,
Okay.
or Trinity at the scene with the helicopter, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and they upload the knowledge to the person's brain, right? I don't know how to fly that helicopter. Oh, I will in just a second. Tank, I need a program for a helicopter. Bam, he uploads it, right? If that helicopter was in the real world, could she fly it?
What? So not a Matrix helicopter?
Yeah, like if she was not connected to the Matrix, is that knowledge just uploaded to her quote unquote avatar, or is it actually uploaded to her brain so that if she's in the real world, she could fly that helicopter?
Dude, that's a cool question. I like to think that it's uploaded to her brain, because that's where I'd want it uploaded. So you have the information regardless of where you are. And I know we didn't include the sequels in this one, but it kind of seems like maybe
Yeah.
I would want it straight to my brain. But here's a question for you, Jeff. Fight style wise, Equilibrium as a good movie to recommend?
Ooh, yeah. Hell yeah. That's a real good movie for something like that. I mean, again, I mean, we've talked about this before, and it might sound a little like a strong statement, but I think The Matrix really redefined what fight sequences looked like in films. It kind of played on the low attention span, the beginning of the low attention span kind of journey that we've gone on in films, right? So The Matrix smashed you in the face with tons and tons of fight choreography that was insanely fast, and bullet time and weapons and guns and flying. And after you'd seen that, you would go and watch, Braveheart, and you'd be like, meh.
That is a great point. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. It was very, very snappy, very fast, and they would slow down the cameras, but that didn't slow down the action. I mean, let's not forget that wonderful moment where Neo does a cartwheel, picks up a gun, takes down some guards before even completing this cartwheel.
Yeah, if you watch that scene enough, you'll realize that his hand really doesn't pick up that gun. But in
they
the next
cut
shot,
to it.
yeah, in the next shot, he's got it.
I wonder if it was one of those where they filmed a few cartwheels, right? Sometimes he's got the gun, sometimes he doesn't, and they edit it so that it's the first one, he doesn't have the gun. Then they realized, oh, geez, this doesn't look great when we show it from afar picking up. All right, Keanu, we're going to need you for 2 hours back at the studio. Pick up the gun in this camera range. All right, edit it in, we're good. We got it.
Yeah. That's right. Oh man, I'm totally in LA right now. I can't get out there. Get a stunt double. Stunt double comes in, picks up the gun. There are a few bloopers that you can find on YouTube where in that lobby scene, he's standing behind a pillar, and this pillar is just getting destroyed with a whole bunch of gunfire from behind. And he goes to turn around the pillar and just completely slips on the gravel that's on the ground and eats it. I mean, that must have been really hard to film because you got all these wires attached to you. You're running around. I mean, practical effects, it was worth it.
Yeah, dude, totally. And you hear all the stories too of the stunt people that got injured during it. And I mean, maybe that's why you do CGI nowadays, so you don't have injured people and you gotta cover the hospital bills. But props to those guys, because oof, that was intense. Oof. But moving on from that, so films, we've got recommendations on whether you like reality questioning, certain fight styles, or influences. But what about print? Any books, any comics?
Yeah, so there are Matrix comics. There's a series of them that you can find. I think they've compiled the series together, so you purchase one book on Amazon.com and read the Matrix comics. The art is very interesting. You definitely have to be a fan of that art style to enjoy what's going on. It's line drawings, it's black and white. It's like a bunch of different cool stuff, and they have some art from storyboards that they're doing in the film and things like that, which is where I really feel that whole Japanese style influence was brought in. So there are the Matrix comics, which you can check out. And then, of course, I think this book, and I know it's a film now, but I think a book about reality bending and living in different realities, plugging into the system. Obviously, Ready Player One is a book that lives in that world, and it's a short read. It's fun. It's a good book, and it relates to this.
Now, do you think thematically the two tied together, or do you think the endings kind of have different meanings?
Oh yeah, I think they have definite different meanings, right? Because you're you're fighting against the man in both situations here, right? The man in the Matrix is this computer program that you're trying to free all these human beings. And in Ready Player One, you're fighting against the man because he needs to be the one that wins this competition so that he can really make the computer program that people are living in not commercial. And it's as deep as what we see in the Matrix, rather, but still it's that reality bending aspect of it where you're plugging in that I think really relates.
Oh, totally, totally. And then for books, I would definitely recommend the Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. It's thick and it can be a little challenging sometimes, but if you get through it, Campbell does a really, really cool job of kind of explaining what the hero journey is, and then how different stories from around the world and across time all follow this, and how by following this, you can usually tell a really good and engaging story because arguably it's something we all feel deep inside. We're unhappy, we want change, we make change happen.
Yeah, I mean the real through line of these stories is that's great.
Totally. And then it looks like honorable mentions is up next. The movie, if there was anything we didn't talk about that we really, really want to bring up, what are those honorable mentions?
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I wanted to talk about a lot of things that we've already talked about now. Just Morpheus's dialogue at the beginning of the film when he's talking to Neo, and you can tell that he's delicately tap dancing around the fact that he has a bombshell that he's going to drop on this guy, and but the fact that he's doing that, and also you can tell that he's elated at the fact that he found the one. That whole performance by him is really great. It's deeper than a one note performance.
Totally. And all the little smirks and the facial expressions are fantastic. Now, what did you think of the scene between him and Agent Smith when he's being tortured, kind of?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because I think we're supposed to think that Agent Smith and the agents are hacking into Morpheus's brain. They're trying to get into his brain to get the codes Zion. Just a side note here, I liked it better when we didn't really know what Zion was or saw what Zion is. It works better
Well,
like
we
that.
didn't see it in the first movie, so there we go.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's like seeing the monster in a horror film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is very interesting. I do think that he does go, if I had one gripe with that scene, he does go from 0 to 100 really fast. And whether that is the inspiration of seeing Neo and, seeing him, which is really great scene when he's firing that 50 cal minigun off of that helicopter and it's just destroying everybody. He happens to not hit Morpheus. Come on, that's cool.
Right, and then Morpheus breaks those cuffs. So you're talking 0 to 100. He goes from being almost hacked to 100% fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is my opinion again. This whole show is our opinions. I should stop saying that. But you see the distress, and the distress is real and it's gross, right? I mean, uh, Agent Smith is like smelling his sweat and he's like so distressed and just gross. And then once he starts taking those chains off, he's still distressed. Chains break. He pulls that thing off of his head. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was like a makeup thing. Maybe it was maybe he just decided, this is a computer program, so whatever. And maybe it works like that. But he just runs. I mean, he's just good after that. And that kind of bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, that he didn't need time to get better. Yeah. And that scene kind of weirded me out because the scene weirded me out a bit because it seems oddly sexual in a way. I don't know if it's just me who got some but the touching, and you're right, the smelling, it was really intense. And Agent Smith is just such a strange character to have Morpheus bound there and then just go to town with his face.
Yeah.
I get it, but yeah, it did kind of sit strange for me.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. It's weird. And I think it's supposed to be weird, right? It's supposed to be like this agent is trying to relate to what it would be like to be a human, right? But trying to smell it, trying to taste it, trying to feel anger, trying to feel something, but it's just not programmed to do that. I guess that's what they're trying to portray.
I like that. I like that explanation a lot. That makes a lot of sense. And also, too, he takes out his ear thing, so we know he's different from the rest of them. We know he's able probably to even break protocol. And you're right there. He glasses off. We see his eyes. He's emoting. And wouldn't that be maddening to know that there's emotion, but you couldn't feel it because you weren't programmed to? Dude, yeah, I think we stumbled onto something.
That's really good thought to think about. I mean, that's what drives him in the end. I mean, to be able to, he wants to destroy everything that has abilities that he doesn't. And we're not talking about abilities like flying in the air or telling the future, just normal, straight up, basic ass abilities of feeling.
Yeah, and I don't know if you even want that burden, Agent Smith. That's too much. It would drive you insane. We live our whole lives with these things. Imagine an AI getting emotion in one day and having to sort through everything. Ugh. All right, well, final question of the day, Jeff, as I lead this show to its inevitable conclusion. Red pill or blue pill? The real question is, does this movie stand the test of time? Will this movie continue being considered a cornerstone of cinema? And is it actually fun to watch as time goes on?
All right, I'm going to make a comparison here that I think might make some people, the hair on the back of their neck stand up. Okay. But I think this lives in the same realm as... Here we go. Send your emails to talkingpicturesalliance@gmail.com.
To this girl right here. I'm the host. I'll take it for you, Jeff. All right, come at me.
I think it lives in the same realm as what we think of like the Beatles, where the Beatles may not be your favorite band. They're not my favorite band. There are a lot of people love the Beatles, and they're all out on the Beatles. But what they did for the industry was insane. Right? I mean, they changed the face of music. The Matrix doesn't live in a place quite as intense as the Beatles do, but they did change what we know and how action films work and how much you should be thinking while you're watching an action film, right? And there are still action films that are happening now, like Taken, or, these movies like On a Train. I'm naming Liam Neeson movies, but there are other movies out there where the action is happening and you can just turn your brain off. Like Casino Royale is a great film. You kind of have to pay attention, but the rest of the film, you can just enjoy it, right? The Matrix, you have to be thinking constantly, and that kind of changed the way that people were thinking about action films at the time, in my opinion. So I think it lives in that genre. So for that very reason, I think it will live on forever. I think you'll be able to watch this. I think it's going to be on Turner Classic Movies. I think people are going to be watching this movie, 20 years from now. I know that people study this film in film school. I know that they study the bullet time, the combat scenes, all of that kind of stuff. They study the performances, good or bad. And I think that practical effects are going to be looked back on in this film and make it live on.
That's a fantastic answer. Oh man, that was so thorough. You covered everything. I agree with you there. And I think, as of course, like with most movies that are pop culture-y, the further away you are from when it released, the more you have to know about the time period it released into. It's one of those things you just can't go into blind and expect to be wowed. Like the people who saw it when it came out were wowed when they saw it, right? Because the kids growing up, the kids these days, I'm sure there are people younger than us these days who have seen all of the movies with the references of The Matrix, but never saw The Matrix. So when you go back to watch it in that vein, you're going to see these tired tropes and be like, how did anyone like this movie? Unless, of course, you take the time to realize that this was the movie that started all this stuff, for good or for bad, whether you like it or not. That's what it did. It laid the groundwork, like you said, and people study it and they'll keep studying it. And I think sci-fi wise, as a genre, you're right. It's going to be in there. It's going to be in the history books.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this is our talk on The Matrix, but we're not going to leave you hanging, no, because we have 2 weeks until our next show. And we have another movie coming up, don't we, Jeff?
Yes, we do. The next movie that we're going to be talking about is The Truman Show, which is one of my personal favorite films of all time. I love The Truman Show, and we want all of you out there to be watching these films with us before the show happens. So you can find this film on Netflix. You can always find all of these films that we talk about on the show on any movie renting service. If you're still using Redbox, you probably won't find The Truman Show. But if you're out there and you're renting things off of iTunes, Amazon, Google, or any other form of Roku or streaming box, you can find The Truman Show as well. And if you have a Netflix subscription, you can just watch it right now.
Heck yes. And then on top of that, if there's something you like about The Truman Show, if there's something you absolutely love about The Truman Show, write to us. Tell us about it. We want to share your thoughts as well as we celebrate these films for what they are. And we have an email, of course, like most functional podcasts these days, talkingpicturesalliance@gmail.com. Or if you're a Twitter person, like I think I am, I think I'm moving away from email, you can tweet at us at TPAcast. And so that is where we will be celebrating The Truman Show. Also, I'm going to say it right now, no spoilers for me. I haven't seen it, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about this. You're gonna really like it. It's a very good film. And if you're out there wondering about how you can watch The Matrix is available on Hulu. You can download it on Hulu and watch it from there. And then of course, all of the other online renting services too.
Awesome. Now, Jeff, before we sign off, where can our lovely listeners find you when we're not here talking about movies?
You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Jeff Reynolds. And of course, I record a show with the lovely Kristen Ashton on Sundays at 12 p.m. Pacific called Heroes Forge, where we're talking about the video game Heroes of the Storm, developed by Blizzard Entertainment. You can find that show, again, Sundays at 12 p.m. Pacific. That's 12 p.m., right? Yeah, 12 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/amovetv.
I have to do that all the time. As for me, you can find me at _Kristen Ashton _ over at Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. And as for this show, find us right here every other Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, twitch.tv/Dream Destroyer, DRMDESTRYR. And we're back May the 21st with The Truman Show. And if you'd like to support this podcast, head on over to patreon.com/TPAcast. So until then, Jeff, any final thoughts?
Dodge this.
Dodge this.
It's been done.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff, so much. That was that was so much fun. I realized as we're going through the notes, oh man, I need to lay these out better.
Oh no, I might have screwed us up there a little bit
No.
because I was like, oh, let's just talk about this. I mean, I think it worked out really well.
Oh, totally. But yeah, and hey, chat, welcome everybody. It's great to see you here. Woo!
Talking about movies.
Movies. Oh, Ghost in the Shell. You're right. Yeah, Ghost in the Shell was another big influence.
Good question came up from Draven here. I still don't understand why the robots don't kill those that get awoken upon finding them. That would be the logical step because letting them live adds to the possible resistance.
I had the same question when we were watching it last night. It didn't make, but I didn't go research why. Maybe there's an answer somewhere to cover it, but yeah, I had the same question last night. Why did he just scan Neo?
Right. Well, I'm wondering if that is what they think of killing them as, right? Because they flush them down the toilet, basically. I mean, if there was no ship there to pick that person up, then that person would die in the sewers of the real world, right? So, and you see this, like when Neo is getting, you know, that silver stuff shoved down his throat or whatever, you see this, that they're trying to locate where he's at in the farm, right? They're trying to find him. If they didn't find him, they wouldn't be there to pick him up and then GG.
Yeah, that's it, right? An oversight by the computers.
Maybe.
Huh. Wait, so Carrie didn't get an Oscar nomination for Truman Show?
No. This is the thing. I think he got a nomination, but he didn't win.
Oh. Because I really do enjoy his more serious performances. He's an incredible actor. So we won
I'm looking now.
Golden Globes, Grammys.
No. He won a Golden Globe, but he didn't even get nominated.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting.
Huh. I wonder if there were too many other things on the docket and that just wasn't Oscar fodder, so it wasn't even considered.
It's interesting that Ed Harris got a nomination for supporting actor. I mean,
oh wait, Ed Harris is in there?
yeah.
Oh,
Oops, I'm not saying it anymore. You gotta watch the movie.
Yeah. Totally.
Chat, you gotta watch it before next week.
Well, that's because we need to talk about it without going spoilers. But also, too, it's so much fun to refresh your memory. And, you know, maybe you really liked it growing up and then you watch it again and you go, You know, there's still a few parts I like.
It is such a feel-good film. I mean, watch it when you want to get into a good mood. I mean, it's got a great arc. It's great.
Oh, that's such a shame. Yeah, but it seems to be one of those things, right? If you go in as a specific type of actor, it's a lot harder for the comedians to break into the more dramatic stuff. But that's good to hear that it's a feel-good film.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. But Ace Ventura was great. Great acting, great comedy, great acting. 10 out of 10. Ace Ventura. All right, sweet.
Amen.
Well, let's call it there then. All right, stream, we're heading out for the night. Be good. Have fun. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.